I remember the exact moment I stopped being afraid and started being confused. My name is Priya Dasgupta. I am a captain with ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization. And on the night the aliens arrived, I was sitting in a cold underground bunker in Geneva, drinking my 9th cup of coffee. I was the liaison officer between India and the United Nations Joint Defense Operations Center, which is a fancy way of saying I spent most of my time translating panic from one language into another. The ships appeared at exactly 11:47 p.m., Greenwich Mean Time. I know because I was staring at the clock, counting down the minutes until my shift ended. Then every screen in the room turned white. Every alarm went off at once, and someone behind me whispered a word I will not repeat. I turned to the main display and saw them. Hundreds of ships in low Earth orbit, arranged in perfect geometric formations. They were beautiful, and I mean that sincerely. They were thin, almost transparent, like the wings of a dragonfly made from polished silver. They caught the sunlight and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the darkness of space. For about 3 seconds, I forgot to breathe. Then the shouting started. Over the next 2 hours, every government on Earth tried to make contact. We sent radio signals, mathematical sequences, even laser pulses. Nothing worked. The ships just hung there, silent and shining, while below them the entire human race held its breath. Then they spoke to us. Every screen, every radio, every phone on the planet carried the same message at the same time. The voice was smooth and calm, translated into every known language simultaneously, through some technology I still do not understand. The message was short. We are the Velthari Dominion. Your world is now claimed. Resistance will be noted, but irrelevant. I sat there, staring at the screen, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not fear exactly, recognition. My grandmother grew up in a small village in Bengal. She used to tell me stories about men who arrived on ships, planted flags on soil that was not theirs, and announced that everything now belonged to them. Different species, I thought. Same arrogance. The second message came 30 minutes later. Ground forces would deploy within 6 hours. We were advised to surrender immediately to avoid unnecessary difficulty. 6 hours. That was all the time humanity had to prepare for its first contact with alien life, which also happened to be an invasion. World leaders argued. Generals shouted. Diplomats wrung their hands. I sat in my chair and watched the clock again. But this time, I was not counting down to the end of my shift. I was counting down to the end of the world. Or so I thought. They relocated me to a forward observation post in the Swiss Alps before the drop began. I stood on a concrete platform carved into the side of a mountain, surrounded by military officers from 12 different countries, all of us watching the sky through binoculars and satellite feeds. The drop pods came down like a meteor shower, thousands of them, burning orange and white as they tore through the atmosphere, targeting capital cities and military bases on every continent. It was, I must admit, a spectacular display. The Velthari clearly had a sense of drama. The first pods hit the ground outside Delhi, Washington, Tokyo, Lagos, London, and Beijing, almost simultaneously. I watched the Delhi feed on a tablet, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The pods opened, and the Velthari stepped out. They were magnificent, nearly 8 feet tall, with long, graceful limbs and skin that shimmered like oil on water. They had 4-jointed arms and faces that were sharp and angular, almost regal. Their armor was slim and elegant, more like formal wear than battle gear. They carried weapons that hummed with a soft blue light. The first Velthari soldier placed 1 foot on Indian soil, straightened to its full height, and immediately stumbled forward like a toddler learning to walk. I blinked. The second one stepped out and dropped to 1 knee, catching itself with both sets of arms. A third made it 3 steps before sitting down heavily, its chest heaving. On the Washington feed, an entire squad of Velthari emerged from their pod and promptly fell over each other in a tangle of iridescent limbs. All around me, officers lowered their binoculars and looked at each other. "What the hell is happening?" said an American colonel standing to my left. I did not answer, because I did not know. But I was watching the Delhi feed, where a Velthari officer was trying to raise its weapon and failing. Its arms shook, its legs trembled. It looked like someone had strapped invisible weights to every part of its body. Then Dr. Miriam Osei, an astrophysicist from Ghana who had been assigned to our post, said the words that changed everything. "Their homeworld gravity," she said quietly, her eyes wide. "It must be a fraction of ours." And just like that, the whole picture shifted. Over the next 2 hours, while the Velthari invasion force struggled to stand upright on 6 continents, Earth's scientific community did what it does best. It analyzed, it calculated, it argued furiously over video calls. And it reached a conclusion. Based on the structure of the alien ships, the thin and fragile hulls, the physiology of the Velthari themselves, the hollow bones, the lean muscles, the tall bodies clearly built for reaching rather than lifting, the answer was obvious. The Velthari evolved on a world with roughly 0.3 times Earth's gravity, less than a third. On their home planet, they were graceful, powerful, and fast. On Earth, every single one of them was carrying the equivalent of 2.5 times their own body weight, constantly, without rest. Their beautiful armor, light as silk on their homeworld, was now crushing them. Their weapons, designed to be aimed with precision in low gravity, were too heavy to hold steady. Their hearts, evolved to pump blood through their bodies under gentle gravitational pull, were now straining to push that same blood upward against a force 3 times stronger than anything they had ever known. I stood on that mountain and watched the greatest invasion fleet in galactic history get defeated by the ground itself. It was not what I expected. The Velthari commanders figured it out quickly, I will give them that. Within 4 hours, frantic orders went out to the drop pods. Retreat, get back to orbit, abort the ground operation. But here was the cruel part. Many of the drop pods could not take off. Their engines, perfectly adequate for escaping a 0.3 gene world, did not have enough thrust to break free of Earth's pull. They sat on the ground like beautiful, useless sculptures, while their occupants gasped and trembled inside. Our forces moved in, and what they found was not a battlefield. It was something much harder to look at. I watched footage from Sao Paulo, where a squad of Brazilian Marines approached a Velthari position. The alien commander saw them coming. With shaking arms, it raised its weapon and managed to fire once. The recoil, amplified by Earth's gravity, threw the weapon upward, and the shot went wide into the sky. Then the commander sank to the ground, its breathing rapid and shallow, its shimmering skin turning pale. One of the Marines holstered his sidearm, walked over, and offered a canteen of water. I had to look away for a moment after that. We had prepared for a war. What we got was a rescue operation. Human soldiers across the world found themselves carrying alien invaders to medical tents, rigging up support frames to take the weight off crushed spines, and improvising oxygen systems for lungs that could not pull enough air under Earth's relentless pull. Within 19 hours, it was over. Thousands of Velthari captured. The fleet in orbit, once it understood what had happened, surrendered without another shot. And that is how humanity won its first interstellar conflict. Not with weapons, not with courage, though there was plenty of that. We won because the ground beneath our feet was heavier than anything the invaders had ever imagined. 3 days later, I was assigned to the diplomatic team. We met the captured Velthari fleet commander in a specially constructed medical pod at a facility in Switzerland. His name was Sorath Velkai, and they had reduced the gravity inside his pod to 0.3 gems just to keep him alive. He was still impressive, even lying on a medical platform with tubes and monitors attached to his body. His eyes, large and golden, tracked me as I entered the room. Through a translation device, he spoke first. "You are small," he said, "and dense, like stones that learn to walk." I almost laughed. "Thank you," I said. "I think." There was a long silence. Then Sorath asked the question that I have thought about every single day since. "How do you live here?" His voice carried something I had not expected from a conquering fleet commander. It carried genuine disbelief. "How do your hearts not fail? How do your bones not break? Your children, how do your children survive?" I looked at him, this tall and beautiful creature who had crossed the stars to take our world, and I felt something complicated. Anger, yes, but also sympathy. He truly did not understand. "We evolved here," I said. "Every bone in my body is dense because it has to be. Every muscle is built to fight a force that never stops pulling me down. My heart beats 100,000 times a day, pushing blood uphill against a gravity that your species cannot even stand in. We do not notice it, Commander. We have never known anything else. This is just what it feels like to be human. Sorath stared at me for a long time. Then he told me something that rearranged my understanding of the universe. The Velthari Dominion had been expanding across the galaxy for nearly 600 years. They had conquered dozens of worlds, subjugated numerous species, and every single spacefaring civilization they had ever encountered had evolved on low-gravity worlds. Every one. The reason was simple, and once he explained it, it was obvious. Low gravity makes it easier to reach space. You need less fuel, less thrust, less engineering to escape a shallow gravity well. Civilizations on light worlds develop space travel faster and more cheaply. They spread outward. They meet each other. Earth, at a full 1 GeM, is an outlier. A world so heavy that escaping it requires enormous rockets, ridiculous amounts of fuel, and a stubbornness that borders on insanity. The galactic community had detected Earth. They had analyzed our gravity, and they had written our planet off as uninhabitable by any intelligent species. No one believed thinking creatures could evolve on a world like this, Sorath said. Your planet is not a home. It is a punishment. Maybe, I said, but it made us strong. Another silence. Yes, Sorath said quietly. It did. The weeks that followed changed everything. The velthari data we recovered painted a picture of a galaxy full of civilizations that were, by human standards, extraordinarily fragile. Light bones, gentle hearts. Bodies built for worlds where falling down meant drifting softly to the ground. And then there were humans. Dense, heavy, enduring. A species that could run for hours without stopping. That could carry loads that would crush any known alien. That could survive injuries that would end most galactic citizens. We were not the weaklings we had always imagined ourselves to be, when we looked up at the stars and felt small. In a galaxy of glass, we were iron. That realization spread across Earth like sunrise. I watched it happen in real time, the way people straightened up, the way they looked at each other differently. We had spent our entire history feeling trapped by gravity, cursing it every time we tried to leave our planet, every time we fell, every time our backs ached and our joints complained. And now, we understood that this very force, this constant invisible pressure, had been forging us into something the galaxy had never seen before. I received my new assignment on a Tuesday morning. Earth would be sending its first delegation to the wider galactic community. Dozens of alien civilizations were watching. Most of them, according to the intelligence we had gathered, were not just curious, they were afraid. My commanding officer told me to be diplomatic, to be careful, to represent humanity with grace and restraint. I told her I would do my best. That night, I stood outside alone and looked up at the stars. The same stars my grandmother used to point at when I was a girl, telling me stories about travelers and conquerors and people who endured. I felt the full weight of Earth's gravity pressing down on me, pulling at my shoulders, my spine, my stubborn human heart. The same weight that had pressed down on every human who had ever lived, shaping us, strengthening us, making us dense and durable and endlessly persistent. The galaxy thought gravity was our curse. They looked at our heavy world and saw a prison. They were wrong. It was our armor. It had always been our armor. I squared my shoulders under the familiar pull of home, and I walked forward into whatever was coming next.